Close your eyes for a second. Imagine standing somewhere so vast, so raw, so utterly alien, that you genuinely feel like you've walked off the edge of the earth. In some places, it looks like heaven. In others, brutal, unforgiving, like nothing should be alive. There's no clock here, no Wi-Fi, no footprints. In some corners of this place, it hasn't rained in millions of years, not a single drop. And yet, this is where more than 70% of all the fresh water on our planet is locked away. Frozen, waiting. If that ice ever fully melts, the world as we know it ends. And here's the terrifying part. It's already started. Winds here can hit 300 kilometers per hour. That's not a storm. That's the land itself telling you to leave. Structures don't survive it. People don't last in it. There are creatures living here that can't exist anywhere else on Earth. Move them somewhere warmer, they die. This is their whole world. Oh, and one more thing. The coldest temperature ever recorded on this planet? It happened here, minus 89.2 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, your tears freeze before they even fall down your face. For 6 months of the year, the sun never sets here. For the other 6, total darkness. 7 countries have been quietly fighting over this place for decades, and yet not one of them owns it. This continent has no government, no citizens, no flag, but the entire world is watching it. Its name is Antarctica, and today we're going inside. Now before we go any further, if you're new here, hit subscribe and tap that bell. Set it to all, because this is exactly the kind of story you don't want to miss halfway through. Let's start with just how big this place is. Antarctica sits at the very bottom of the Earth, the South Pole, and it is massive. We're talking over 14 million square kilometers of ice. To put that in perspective, you could fit 7 countries the size of India inside it and still have room to spare. But here's what most people get wrong. This isn't ocean ice. It's not salt water frozen over. This is fresh water, the same kind you and I drink. Billions upon billions of liters of it, stacked up in layers thousands of meters deep. Scientists actually call Antarctica an ice desert. And that name is surprisingly accurate, because even though water is literally everywhere here, it almost never rains. Any rain that does fall freezes before it even touches the ground. So technically, snowfall is the rainy season here. Weird, right? Here's something that genuinely messes with your head when you first hear it. For 6 months, roughly October to March, the sun never sets in Antarctica. 24 hours of daylight every single day. You'd need blackout curtains just to sleep. Then from around June to August, it flips completely. The sun disappears for months. This period is called the polar night, and it's when Antarctica becomes something else entirely. Temperatures drop to around minus 60 degrees. The winds get worse, and the number of scientists stationed here drops from over 5,000 down to just about 1,000. The ones who stay through winter? Respect. There's also something quietly beautiful about the Antarctic sky. One particular star never sets here. It circles overhead all year, always visible, always shining. In a place this extreme, that small constant feels almost like a companion. Okay, so here's the question that actually matters. Why does the world care this much about a frozen continent with no people on it? The answer is because Antarctica might be the most scientifically valuable piece of land on Earth. For starters, the air here is so dry, so clean, so completely free of dust and humidity that telescopes can see deeper into space from Antarctica than almost anywhere else on the planet. In 2019, when scientists captured the very first photograph of a black hole, that image came partly from a telescope sitting on Antarctic ice. Think about that. A picture of something 55 million light years away, made possible because of a frozen desert at the bottom of our world. But that's not all. Scientists here drill down into the ice and pull out what are called ice cores, long cylinders of frozen history. Trapped inside those layers of ice is air from thousands, sometimes millions of years ago, ancient atmosphere, preserved perfectly. By studying it, researchers can understand what Earth's climate looked like long before humans existed and model where it's heading now. The ice isn't just water, it's a record. And there's something even more striking. Waste management in Antarctica is treated almost like a religion. Every single piece of rubbish generated by researchers is carefully collected and shipped off the continent once a year, because even the slightest contamination could corrupt data that took decades to collect. Here's something that blew my mind when I first learned it. Antarctica wasn't always like this. Millions of years ago, this continent was warm. There were active volcanoes here, forests possibly, life of a kind we can barely imagine. It sat at a different latitude and slowly, over millions of years, drifted southward through a process called plate tectonic movement, until it locked into place at the South Pole, where sunlight barely reaches, and the cold just took over. The continent that was once burning is now the coldest place on Earth. The lowest temperature ever officially recorded was on July 21, 1983, minus 89.2 degrees Celsius, at a Soviet research station called Vostok. At that temperature, exposed skin freezes in under a minute. Fuel gels, metal becomes brittle, and the human body starts shutting down almost immediately. Antarctica was first discovered in 1820 by two Russian explorers. Today, around 30 countries collectively manage the continent under an international agreement signed in 1959. That treaty is actually remarkable. It bans all military activity, prohibits nuclear weapons, and prevents any country from mining the land. No one owns it, and somehow that's worked. All right, let's talk about the residents, the actual residents. Because as harsh as Antarctica is, it does have life, and some of it is extraordinary. The most iconic, obviously, is the penguin. Antarctica is the only place on Earth where wild penguins naturally live, and 18 different species call it home. The largest, the emperor penguin, stands nearly 1.5 meters tall. The smallest is barely 30 centimeters. But it's not just their size that's fascinating, it's how they survive. After the female lays an egg, she heads out to sea to feed for up to 2 months. And during that entire time, the male stands there, in blizzards, in polar night, in minus 60-degree winds, holding the egg on his feet, keeping it warm under a fold of skin on his belly. He doesn't eat. He doesn't leave. He just waits. Because if that egg touches the ice for even a moment, the chick inside dies. When the female finally returns with food, the male walks to the ocean, sometimes hundreds of kilometers, to finally eat for the first time in months. When the chicks are old enough, they're gathered into a group called a creche while the adults go hunting. And in December, when the temperature nudges slightly upward and the ice begins to soften, the young penguins take their very first plunge into the ocean. It should be a triumphant moment, except lurking beneath that water are leopard seals and sharks, some aggressive enough to smash through sheets of ice to get to their prey. Antarctica giveth, Antarctica also taketh away. Alongside penguins, you'll also find seals, various mosses and fungi, and microbial life that survives in conditions that would kill almost anything else. Antarctica has produced some genuinely bizarre chapters in human history too. In 1978, Argentina, in an attempt to assert a territorial claim, deliberately sent a pregnant woman to Antarctica. She gave birth there, making her son the first person ever born on the continent. To date, 9 children have been born in Antarctica, all healthy, all with the most unusual birthplace in human history. Getting around the continent is its own adventure. There are no paved airports here. You can't pour concrete on shifting ice, so planes land on compacted snow and ice runways using a ski landing system, gliding to a stop over a long stretch because conventional brakes simply don't work. Pilots need special certification just to attempt it, and there are still regions of Antarctica where no human being has ever stood. Not because no one's tried, but because the winds are so severe, the terrain so inaccessible, that even modern aircraft and ships can't safely reach them. There's a strange kind of humility in that. Here's where I want to slow down. because this part matters. The ice in Antarctica is considered the purest freshwater source on the planet, untouched, uncontaminated, built up over millions of years. And we are melting it. Global temperatures are rising because of us, because of what we burn and what we release, and the ice shelves are breaking. Glaciers that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years are collapsing into the ocean. The fresh water we're losing can never be replaced on any human timescale. And as that water flows into the sea, ocean levels rise, threatening coastal cities, island nations, entire populations around the world. This isn't a distant future problem. It's happening now. The scientists in Antarctica aren't just doing cool research. They're watching a clock tick down and trying to tell the rest of us. The question is whether the rest of us are listening. If you ever get the chance to visit Antarctica, and it's more possible than you might think, no visa required, just a proper tour operator and the right gear. Go between November and March. That's the summer window. Bring serious cold weather clothing, waterproof boots, gloves, and layers you wouldn't think you need. Because Antarctica doesn't care how prepared you think you are. But if you do make it there, standing on that ice, in that silence, looking out at something completely untouched by modern life, I imagine it feels like standing at the beginning of the world, or maybe the end of it. Either way, it's something you'd never forget. So tell me, if you had the chance, would you go? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. If this one got you thinking, give it a like. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.